Gym and Kitchen. I'm your host, Shona. Gym and Kitchen is a show dedicated to educating real people on how to create a healthy lifestyle, and my job as the host is to coach and guide you past the obstacles that stand in the way of the health and fitness that you want. Gym and Kitchen covers a range of topics in the health, fitness, and wellness space, from gym strategies, great recipes, to the habits and beliefs that govern our food and fitness choices. You can find Gym and Kitchen on the web, Facebook, and Instagram at gymandkitchen.biz. Gym and Kitchen is produced bi-weekly and airs every second Thursday on YouTube. Thanks so much for watching. Now, here's this week's episode. Hi everyone, welcome to this week's episode of Gym and Kitchen. I'm your host, Shona. And this week we're doing something really exciting. We are talking about electrolytes, which is why I have this little lineup on the table in front of me today. Electrolytes are getting a lot of airtime right now. They're very popular, they're kind of a buzzword on the street, and they're really important. I've been a huge fan of taking a look at electrolytes and using an over-the-counter electrolyte for a number of years, and even before that I was really consciously aware of how can I make my own kind of sports drink. I've never really been a fan of the sports drinks like Gatorade or anything like that. They're loaded with sugar and they're loaded with sweeteners, and they're not really that good for you. And so in the past several years, there have been many companies, like the four we see in front of us, but it's not an exhaustive list, companies who have produced electrolytes specifically based for sports training to help you maintain that chemical balance in your body while you're exercising. So, what is an electrolyte? Let's start from the beginning. In short, an electrolyte is a mineral that carries an electrical charge in the body. Your body is electrical, your heart is electrical, your brain is electrical, and your body is about 60% water. So there is a lot going on in there. Electrolytes help with things like making sure that your muscles are contracting properly. They regulate your chemical reactions in the body. They help with maintaining balance of fluids in and out of the cells. And there's so much more. In short, we know that electrolytes are something that we all need. They are widely promoted by people who are active in competitive sports and any other kind of athletics. And at this point, electrolytes are really commonplace. I think it's really valuable for anybody who is active, especially if you're spending time outdoors or you're sweating profusely, to look at adding an electrolyte into your routine. Now, you really only need one a day, otherwise sometimes things happen to your body, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that when I discuss this range of electrolytes that I'm going to do a little taste test for you. So I have 4 different brands of electrolytes here. I have Noon, which has been one of the gold standards for a long time. I have one called Insalted, I-N salted. I have BioSteel, which is the one that comes in the big container. Then I have one called Element, L-M-N-T. Electrolytes are consumed by mixing them in water, so I'm going to set that up and we'll be right back. Okay, so we're all set up here to start our experiment. Now, electrolytes generally recommend that you take them with a minimum of 16 ounces or 2 cups of water, up to a maximum of 32 ounces. Each of these glasses is just barely 2 cups. I measured it out. I might be riding a little bit under with a couple of these, maybe by a teaspoon or 2. It will be just fine for this demonstration, but I do recommend that if you're going to use an electrolyte, that you get yourself a protein shaker or a 1-liter water bottle, and that's going to be your best bet for dissolving these electrolytes. So we're going to start with the Noons. Now I've got the flavor here is lemon lime. You're going to notice the theme as we go along. I personally prefer the citrus-based ones. They also make a lot of berry blends. It's just not my personal preference, but these are the ones that I prefer. So Noons have a couple of really good things about them. One of them is they come in this nice, small, easy, convenient packet, and then they come out like a little tablet, and I'm just going to drop it in the water, and it's going to dissolve. So they're effervescent. You'll see it fizzing away. Okay, so that's Noons. Put that right there so we know which one is which. The next one we're going to set up is Insalted. So it comes in a nice little individual package. This is the citrus mix. I'm just going to tear it open and dump it in. And then we're going to stir it up. Now, I'm that person that stirs things like this with a fork because I find that it works a little bit better. You can stir with whatever you like. If you're using a protein shaker, then it will mix things up nicely for you. The next one that we're going to do is BioSteel. So it comes in a tub and it has a scoop that tells me how much I'm going to put in. So I'm just going to fill that scoop up and then I'm going to dump it into the water, and then again I'm going to have to stir it. We'll see if we go along with these dissolve a little bit better. And then finally, we're going to put the Element one into that front one. And this is orange salt. So Elements always says salt on them. We'll talk about that in a moment. Okay, as those are dissolving, I want to talk a little bit more about the kinds of things that are in electrolytes. So the most common electrolytes that you will probably see in the over-the-counter types are sodium, potassium, and magnesium. Those should all sound very, very familiar. Sodium is salt, potassium is found in bananas, so they're often touted as a really important food to eat, partly for the electrolyte reason, and then magnesium, which you can purchase in a supplement. Magnesium is getting a lot of airtime as well these days. I'm not going to talk about that in this episode, but maybe I'll come back to it in a different one. The balance is all a little bit different in them, which is why it's worth trying them out to see which ones work the best for you. So I'm still having a little trouble getting a couple of these to dissolve. The BioSteel doesn't totally want to dissolve, but I think it's getting there. Okay, and then the Insalted, also almost there. And the Noon is doing its thing. You might be able to see it there as it dissolves in the glass. Now some people like to go ahead and just drink the Noon right away, but I'm just going to let it do its thing. And I can kind of hear it fizzing out as it goes. Let's start out with this, and we're going to see, and I might make some faces. I do, in full disclosure, I do consume electrolytes on a pretty regular basis. I usually have one a day, but it depends on what kind of training cycle I'm in and what I'm doing. BioSteel has a little bit of extra stuff in it. It's also got some essential amino acids in it, so that's something to consider when you purchase your electrolytes. If you don't go with one of these particular brands, make sure that you're checking the other ingredients in them too, to make sure that that's something that you want to have as part of your nutrition routine. So I think we're pretty much ready to go. I'm going to start out with the Element one. So this is orange salt, and we're just going to have a sip of it and see. It's salty, but not a super strong salty. Okay, so I want you to keep that in mind. Sodium and salt are one of the key components of an electrolyte. And I know that before electrolytes became popular, if I was out doing military work, one of the things that would come in our rations was a juice pack. But we also got 2 salt packets in our rations, and so I would take that juice pack and I would add the 2 salt packets into my juice pack, into my canteen, and shake it up and then drink it. And I found that that actually worked very, very well in terms of managing my fluids and not just having them literally go right through me. I will say again, in full disclosure, Element is one of my favorite ones. I find that it's one of the most effective, and I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end. But flavor-wise, it's going to be saltier than you expect if you're used to something sweet, but the flavor on them is really nice. They've done a really, really good job of making a flavor balance. I'm just going to have a little sip of water to cleanse my own palate before I go on to the next ones, and then we're going to try the next ones. Okay, now that I've got the important piece here for me, which is just to cleanse things, now let's try BioSteel. So it's dissolved fully now. So you'll notice that the BioSteel and the Insalted did take a little bit longer to dissolve, as did the Noon, whereas the Element dissolved pretty quickly. So I think that's something that is also really important to note as you're choosing your electrolyte, is how well do you need it to dissolve, how quickly do you need it to dissolve. So now we're going to take a sip of the BioSteel. Okay, so it's also citrusy. And I take a sip of it, and it's definitely sweeter than the Element. It does not have as high a sodium content in it. The flavor is quite nice. Most of these are sweetened with stevia. Insalted has one called Glivia. We'll talk about that when we get there. But the BioSteel has a really nice flavor. It's very tolerable. It's actually very refreshing on a really hot day, can confirm. But it does have a lower sodium content, and sodium is one of the most important electrolytes that we want to get, which is why companies like Element and Insalted are producing an electrolyte that has a much higher salt content. However, flavor-wise, BioSteel is definitely one of my top in terms of flavor, and I find that overall the citrus one is really good. I personally have some trouble with the berry ones. I don't really like berry flavors, and I have noticed that if I buy the berry blends or the blueberry ones from BioSteel, well, the flavor is okay for me. I also find that they cause a little bit of digestive distress, so that one is not on my radar. I stick with the citrus-based ones, and those get along with me a lot better, and I like the flavor of them. All right, let's try the Insalted one. So, Insalted is a fairly new electrolyte brand. It, like Element, is promoting an electrolyte that has a much higher sodium content. Now, it also contains potassium and magnesium. Something you want to be mindful of is that there are different types of magnesium, and so between Insalted and Element, the types of magnesium that are in them are different. I'm not going to go into depth on those particular supplements today, but there's lots of information on the internet if you want to look it up. I suggest that's something that you do because they are different, they do perform differently in your body. Now, the other thing with Insalted is it is sweetened with something called Glivia, which is a new artificial sweetener. I am not a dietitian, I am also not a nutritionist, so I'm not totally up on where Glivia comes from. It's trying to rival stevia because there are a number of people who are unable to consume stevia because it bothers their stomach. So the hope was that Insalted would produce something that would be a little bit different and maybe accessible for those people. So I'm going to try this one. It is the citrus one. If the look on my face didn't already give it away. So what I find with the Insalted ones is that, possibly because of the Glivia, there's a weird aftertaste to it that I don't particularly care for. It's not as salty as the Elements, but it's also not as flavorful as any of them. In terms of electrolyte balance overall, it's a good balance. It does have that higher level of sodium, which I think is really, really important in an electrolyte, but as flavor goes, I know that Insalted is not one of the ones that I'm going to be purchasing again because I really don't care for the flavor and that odd aftertaste that is coming with it. All right, let's cleanse things one more time, and then I'm going to try the Nuuns for you. Okay, Nuuns. So, the Nuun tablet has finished dissolving, and it's a nice bright color right there. Now, I've been using Nuuns for several years. I have a few friends who have been ambassadors for Nuun. I am not an ambassador or affiliate of any of these. These are just electrolytes that I have personally tried and feel are probably the best options out there. I know there are many more to try out. I'd love to hear in the comments if you have one that you try and that you really like and you want me to try it out. I'd be more than happy to try it out. Just let me know which one it is and I'll check it out. So, Nuuns. So Nuuns are less sweet than BioSteel, but they have a nice light flavor. Again, like the BioSteel, they are not as salty because that's not their predominant electrolyte in there. I have been known to take both BioSteel and Nuuns and add in a teaspoon of salt depending on what I'm doing because I want that higher sodium content. That's up to you if you choose to do something like that. In terms of flavor, I find that Nuuns are pretty good. They're kind of fun because they are fizzy if you put them into a water bottle and then screw the top on and let it do its thing. When it opened up, you get a satisfying little poof as the fizz releases. But aside from that, Nuuns are certainly one of the gold standards, and of course they have the advantage that they come in this really nice, easy little package and there's not as much waste. One of the things I do find with Nuuns, it's not as bad with the others, although BioSteel is kind of on the edge, is because the sodium content is not as high. I find that if I drink one, that I have to make sure that I'm near a bathroom fairly soon because I'm probably going to have to pee very soon. It does go through me a little bit faster than the two that are higher in sodium. So that's something to consider as well. So let's do a quick overview of these 4 electrolytes and we'll look at some pros and cons of them. Since I just finished with Nuun, I'm going to start with that one because it's fresh on my mind. So Nuuns, the pros is that it comes in this nice little package. Okay, you get a whole bunch of them. They're fairly inexpensive. It winds up being about 10 or 12 bucks Canadian depending on where you purchase them for one little tube of Nuuns. So they're really, really easy. You can just pop them into your water bottle and let them do their thing, and then you've got an electrolyte ready to go. They don't usually have too much trouble with clumping, and again, they're really affordable. So that's something to keep in mind. All right, Insalted. All right, so the advantage to Insalted is that it's a little bit cheaper than the Elements, but the con is that it's a little bit more expensive than some of the others. If you're trying to avoid stevia, it doesn't have stevia in it, so that's something that you can take a look at. On the con side, I personally find that the flavor is not as good with them and it leaves a funny aftertaste for me. And so if you're susceptible to that, then you might want to be careful of if Insalted is the right thing for you. All right, BioSteel. BioSteel across the board sort of wins out as the mid-range. The price point is fairly good, especially if you're buying it in the tub like this. You can buy the tubs off of Amazon, at least that's where I get them. I've also seen them in grocery stores. They are reasonably priced for what they are, and the flavor is good, but again, they are a little bit lower in sodium. So if you're doing any kind of physical activity outside where it's very hot or there's a lot of physical exertion and you're sweating, if you're going to go with BioSteel, you might want to look at adding in a little bit of salt to that. And then finally, Elements. I will say, in full disclosure, the Elements are my favorites. They have a really good range of flavors. So far that I've found, there aren't too many flavors of theirs that I don't care for. You can buy variety packs of them so you can try them out. The flavor of them is, again, overall really good. They are one of the most effective. They are the ones that are promoted when I go to fitness workshops. They are the ones that are promoted by the nutritionists and the dietitians there and the sports coaches who work with athletic teams. They say Elements are the best ones to help maintain the fluid balance in the body. The disadvantage with Elements is that they are expensive and you cannot find them in most stores. You can now buy them on Amazon if you're in Canada, which you couldn't for a while, so that's a big plus. They don't carry all their flavors, but you can get most of them off of Amazon, which is great, or you can buy them off of the Element website. I am told that if you buy them in real bulk, then you get a discount if you buy, I think it's 3 or more boxes from that particular website. I'm usually only buying 1 box at a time. I don't go through them at quite at that rate otherwise. But just keep that in mind, that if budget is something that is a consideration for you, that Elements are one of the most expensive. That said, you get what you pay for a lot of things. They are really good, and again, full disclosure, they are 100% my favorites, but I do use all of them depending on what I'm doing, except the Insulted. To be quite honest, I'm not sure I'm gonna go back to those just purely because of the flavor. So that's been my little taste test of electrolytes. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do with these now that I'm all done with them and I've got 4 days worth of electrolytes here. I guess they're just going to go in the fridge and maybe I'll drink them as I go or pawn them off on a friend who comes by. I hope this has been really helpful for you. So if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like it and make sure that you are subscribed to the channel so you don't miss out on the next episode. And if you really like this episode, please remember to tell a friend and tell them to check it out as well, because that's what helps the channel grow. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next episode. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to share this episode with a friend. Plus, remember to connect with Gym and Kitchen on the web, Instagram, and Facebook at gymandkitchen.biz. Newsletter subscribers also get access to the next episode in advance of the public release, as well as other goodies, such as advanced notes of courses and workshops that I'm going to put on, and articles that I've curated that I think are relevant for my audience. You can subscribe to the newsletter in the link in the description. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you in the next episode.